morning, two Deans. Jonas Dean, political commentator, and Oliver Dean, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you both?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. I mean, what do you make of the political situation currently? I mean, there's so much going on, not just domestically, but internationally as well.
Well, I'd say, if we're looking internationally, we've got Trump's inauguration.
We have
tomorrow.
It's a big gig,
and it is a big gig. And
yeah.
I think you were just saying there, we've got a lot of UK politicians going over to the inauguration, and I think it's quite worrying as well that we've seen the relationship that Keir Starmer has had with Trump previously, the comments that he's made, and we saw as well in the US election with Labour aides going over to aid the Democrats against Trump. I think it's quite worrying in terms of the relationship and the dynamic that we're going to see between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump for the next 4 years.
What do you think?
Good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
Thank you for having me. Just before we start, there is intrigue about everything, but I want to take a second to say that I, like everyone, hope that the hostage crisis comes to an end.
The reason I didn't really want to start talking about that in this particular section is I think everyone is on the same side, that actually what we're hoping for is the ceasefire does start at some point. I mean, since you bring it up, I mean, the tragedy that Israel has started again on their military operation, as they're calling it, and that people have died in the last hour. I mean, that should have started 2 hours ago. But, rather than take political sides, I think, everyone just hopes the ceasefire is enacted.
And I just wanted to raise that before. And it comes to the point that today, before Trump has taken office, the world is starting to change and people are looking with intrigue.
So let me just ask you, the prospect of this ceasefire, since you bring it up, how much of this do you think is down to Trump leveraging or saying to Netanyahu, sort this out?
Well, look, there's a new administration coming in on January 20th, and the ceasefire has been brokered on January 19th. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, I don't.
However critical I am of many of Trump's policies, he said that all hell will break loose if it isn't resolved, whatever that means. It's obvious that there is a connection, and things are changing today.
Yeah, they are, very much so. And just to bring you the latest on that, the ceasefire has been delayed until Hamas actually releases the names of those hostages. That was the latest, slightly earlier on. Benjamin Netanyahu says the Gaza ceasefire will not go ahead until Hamas provides the names of those first 3 hostages. As I said, they have to be released 24 hours before a ceasefire begins. Israel has now resumed their military action, and as I said, this is really prolonging the agony for those who are caught up in that, and we'll bring you more on that as and where we can. Let's just move back to Donald Trump, the inauguration. But obviously that has relevance, and he has pushed Netanyahu. I think that's pretty obvious. Your thoughts?
So Labour is in a precarious position because the Trump administration coming in tomorrow is not the same Trump administration that came in 2016. Twitter has come back to bite everyone from the Labour Party, and there's been this very popularised distrust or dislike between the two administrations. Diplomacy will be very difficult under Trump, and that's because not just the UK, but all elements of geopolitics and diplomacy, as we know, it seems to be keeling to the fact that no one knows what the hell he's going to...
Why is diplomacy going to be difficult?
Well, diplomacy is going to be difficult because the special relationship doesn't seem like it applies the same way under a Trump presidency. It's not about
doesn't it apply under Starmer's Britain?
I don't think it applies under a Trump presidency, because it's not about what can we do for each other, it's about how do things work for America. And that applies in all aspects of Trump's leadership.
Your thoughts?
I would say, we've seen with senior Trump aides and people close to Trump trying to back Nigel Farage for Prime Minister in the next general election.
Yeah, it's front page.
Yeah, it seems as though Trump's team is, as the Daily Mail said, trying to get revenge on Keir Starmer for...
Well, it was blinking stupid, wasn't it, for Starmer to intervene or try to intervene to get Kamala Harris elected. Hang on a minute, wait. No. But from, and this is the headline this morning, so Team Trump are basically saying, right, you interfered with us, we're now going to get Nigel Farage elected.
No, and I think it was a diplomatic misstep from Keir Starmer to come out and do that, especially when you are the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because no matter...
The closest ally to the United States.
The closest ally, and, the US election was always going to be basically a coin toss, and so to gamble potential trading partnerships with the US, all on, you know, whether you're going to back Kamala Harris or Donald Trump was very risky. And now we're going to see, you know, with Trump saying that he might implement tariffs on UK goods. UK consumers.
Well, he's saying tariffs across the board to it, which is your point,
yeah.
which is to any third country.
But it's worrying for British people and British consumers if we're going to suffer as a result of Keir Starmer's missteps.
Sorry, you were going to say.
So just to correct the records, there was no concerted effort from the Labour Party to campaign for Kamala Harris. What there was a member of the...
I'm just looking quizzically at you at that
What
point.
there was... No, because it was investigated. It was investigated by the Electoral Commission. And not only was it not illegal, it also wasn't true. There was a LinkedIn post from someone who worked in the Labour Party...
Well, Trump obviously thinks it's true.
Well, I'm not sure that's the barometer for truth. But it's... like I'm sure all elections, always, there have been, I'm sure with Conservatives, there have been people that went over to campaign during the election, and it wasn't a party initiative in any way. And you can tell that in part because Keir has changed his message.
But hang on a minute.
If I could just finish the point also,
yeah.
Your discussion here about the special relationship is very evident, because if there was such a special relationship, then for there to already be such a fraction between the leadership of America and any sort of direction that Britain starts to take undermines the idea of this non-negotiable special relationship, this we trust each other and diplomacy behind closed doors.
Let's make this very clear. There is a special relationship, but America will always be put first by Donald Trump. And actually, I think that's the right thing.
Well, no, exactly. Well, I agree with that, and that's my point before.
So just in terms of that, I was asking John earlier, who's had a good week, who's had a bad week. It seems to me Nigel Farage is loving it. He's out there. He's been talking to veterans. He's been doing all sorts of things. That, I think, and I'm being careful, but that is again another problem for Starmer.
No, absolutely, and it seems as though Keir Starmer is facing problem after problem, with, you know, Reformer rising in the polls. Farage is soaring in popularity, and the more Keir Starmer is in office, the longer he's in office, it seems as though every opportunity he's making mistakes, he's making errors, and it looks as though he's going to suffer the consequences for that in the next general election.
It's a problem, isn't it? Nigel Farage is a problem for Starmer.
Nigel Farage is a problem for Starmer and for Kevin Badenoch. It's look, so far Nigel Farage has been a very good MP for Washington DC, but it's not without difficulty for him. We saw what happened with Elon Musk the other day. Yeah. There is this thing that's going on where the Trump administration is impenetrable to criticism. It's for meddling like this from another country in British politics is, I think, unprecedented, especially with the special relationship. Look, it's obviously a relationship for Starmer, and the question is there a way to be pragmatic, to leverage it, and to build bridges?
OK, let me ask you that question after the break, though. I do have to go to a break. Thank you very much for the moment, gentlemen. We'll continue with our Future Politics panel after this break.
UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Weekend Breakfast with David Bill, 8:40, Sunday, January. It's flown by. Sunday, January the 19th. I'm in the middle of our Future Politics panel with Jonas Dean, political commentator, and Oliver Dean, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Now, where did we get to? Because we were talking about, obviously, what's going on in the United States. I'm just so intrigued about tomorrow. Of course, they've moved it inside because the weather is... Someone said on Twitter, they're just being wet and they should carry on outside. I mean, it's -5. And I think it's more about older people being outside, and obviously you can't have that. So Donald Trump is obviously going, and your point is really valid, which is I think he's going to rewrite global kind of politics. It will be fascinating to see where we are. Nigel Farage, we were just talking about this. He is rather loving it over there. He attended a lunch for military veterans with Pete Hegseth, who's the US Defence Secretary. This was yesterday. He went to a rather nice do on Friday, £150,000 Stars and Stripes and Union Jack party. Wasn't invited. That was on the Hay Adams Hotel overlooking the White House. Well, it'll be nice. 300 guests, including Steve Bannon. He's also going to be there, as I said, with Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Dame Priti Patel. What would you do if you were Keir Starmer? Because they've assembled a mini cabinet, apparently. This is the great brains of David Lammy, Keir Starmer, who else is in there? Rachel Reeves and so on. What would you do if you were Keir Starmer right now?
In order to build bridges with America.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, look,
not only that, and to counter Farage, Kemi Badenoch's quite an interesting point. Where is she?
Yeah. So she's really struggled with this, and I'm sure she'll struggle with reform rising in the polls. That party of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Nigel Farage is not a dinner table I'd want to be at anyway, personally.
I don't think you were invited.
Well, me and Keir Starmer.
Yeah,
but,
well, that's right.
What would I do? I think I'd do what he's done for a lot of his prime ministership, which is start looking at kind of formal routes of diplomacy. There needs to be bridges built between the two administrations, and there are being. There was a dinner with Lammy and Starmer, and it is just about looking forward and not just being responsive, but anticipating what is going to happen.
Would you replace David Lammy? I mean, I'm not sure you should have anyone in there in that role saying that Trump was a neo-Nazi sympathiser and sociopath.
I mean, but then again, David Lammy's got a very good relationship with J.D. Vance, and so there are bridges to be built between.
Okay, let me ask you this. Yeah. So Peter Mandelson, he's another one actually. He is the UK's ambassador to the US, or the incoming UK's ambassador to the US. Donald Trump may well veto his position. People have said this morning, well, that's outrageous, he's getting involved in UK politics. Actually, it's not, because the president has to approve that role. Yeah. So again, that would be a major problem. Peter Mandelson actually is changing his tune. He's now saying, well, China is a threat, because previously he basically pointed the finger at Trump and said that Trump was standing in the way of China and that we need to increase our deals with China. But Peter Mandelson could well be out. How much of a problem is that for Starmer?
I think it is a massive problem, and I think Starmer actually has a rather tactical choice to be made here, and there is an argument to say that he could put Nigel Farage forward as the possible ambassador to the United States. I mean, Nigel Farage is coming out bragging about his relationship with Trump, how he's the best British politician to be able to work with Trump. Why don't we see if that's the case, and we send him to Washington and we see if he can get a good deal for us? It keeps him out of British politics, which, I mean, if that's what Keir Starmer wants, if he's really concerned about reform, then he can stand to benefit from that. And there could be a trade deal to be had between the UK and the US.
It's so funny you say that. I said this right at the beginning. I said, actually, if I had a problem like Nigel Farage, which is a problem for Starmer, the best way of actually annulling that is to make him UK's ambassador to the US.
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot to be said on the topic. The newspapers this week are reporting that Farage is boasting to his room of Americans that he'll be Prime Minister before the next election.
He is.
So whether he'll take the job, which will not be offered to him as ambassador to the United States anyway, it means stepping down as an MP.
Wouldn't that be very magnanimous of Starmer if he did offer it?
Would it be magnanimous? I mean, there's very practical reasons for doing it. Look, it won't happen, magnanimous or not.
Why won't
it? Won't happen because he'd stepped down as an MP, something he's run 7 times without success for. It won't happen because it would stunt.
Most MPs run before they get in.
I know. It won't.
I thought that was a low blow.
It won't happen because he, I think, is enjoying his time in Parliament. He is. He's sort of informal ambassador to the US anyway, and it's a conversation that just won't happen. I don't think he'd accept the job, and I don't think it would be offered.
It's interesting. I mean, just in terms of that. So Peter Mandelson, I think, is in somewhat of trouble. We've also got Farage as well over there. Just in terms of, where do you see the UK government and also the opposition parties talking about relationships with Europe? Yeah. Yesterday we talked about Ed Davey and his kind of attitude towards the European Union. Yeah. Should we concentrate on Europe or concentrate on the US?
I think we need to. I mean, it sounds like a cop-out answer, but I think we need to strike a balance between the two. I mean, we can have perfectly good trade deals with the EU, we can have perfectly good relations with the EU, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to turn our back on the United States. But I think Keir Starmer needs to take the diplomatic initiative. I think he needs to formally apologise to President Trump for the comments he's made, for the comments that members of his cabinet has made in the past, and I think he needs to set aside his ideological and political differences and get what's best for the British people.
Let's talk about Sadiq Khan. Yesterday I played these 2 clips in the London Assembly. He refused to answer Susan Hall, who I thought did a marvellous job, and basically saying, tell me about the grooming gangs, is it a problem in London? He refused to answer. He kept trying to get her to say these are Pakistani grooming gangs. I personally think she probably should have done that, but anyway, it had huge traction with our audience. And then Alex Wilson, who's Reform's member in the Assembly, said, look, knife crime is a major problem and we need to have a cross-party solution to this. Sadiq Khan then says, I make it as a matter of principle never to work with Reform, which I thought was rather puerile and pathetic. But this morning, Sadiq Khan has written an op-ed in The Observer saying the West must face up to a century-defining battle against a resurgent far right that is on the march across the developed world. He calls on ministers to take on extremism ahead of Donald Trump's second inauguration as US president. He says progressives across the Western world face a century-defining challenge and the stakes for liberal democracy couldn't be higher. The hard right and the far right are on the march. These are deeply worrying times, especially if you're a member of a minority community. Sadiq Khan is the mayor of London.
So it isn't the mayor?
He is the mayor of London, and he's writing an op-ed about Donald Trump and the far right. I want him to sort out his LTNs, the ULEZ, the flower pots in the middle of the road, the fact he can't drive anywhere.
Yeah, so if he wasn't the mayor of London, I don't totally disagree with the contents of his messaging, with messaging anyway. But the bigger point is, I think this needs to be seen about how it's impacting the broader Labour Party, which is now the leading party of the UK and their relationship with America.
Well, they're neck and neck with, hang on a minute, the latest poll is they're neck and neck with Reform.
And the last general election was a thumping majority. But,
yes. But hang on a minute, we've moved on significantly.
Sure.
And you can see the dissatisfaction of people in the Labour government currently.
So that op-ed shouldn't have been posted. There is a history of...
why don't I throw that back to you and say this is freedom of speech, he's allowed to write what he wants?
And I agree with both things. I think I don't think he should... he's allowed to write what he wants, and I don't think it's good for the party for it to happen, and not the day before Inauguration Day. There's a history of attack from Trump towards London, and this idea that's been... ideas of radicalism in London that aren't necessarily reflective of reality, and knife crime, and there is a sort of PR battle going on and has been going on for many years.
But we do have a problem with radicalism, and we do have a problem with knife crime.
Not to the extent, the idea that police can't go to many places in London. There was a smear campaign from the Trump team about Sadiq Khan and from Elon Musk. But look, there needs to be adult politics.
Yeah. I mean, I basically agree with much of what Jonas has just said. I mean, look, I don't think Sadiq Khan should have come out and written the op-ed. I mean, look, as we say, he's got the right to do it. He's got the right to express his views. But if he's an incumbent mayor of London, and we're already dealing with difficult relationships with the US. The last thing you want to do is, before the president-elect is taken his oath into office, the last thing you want to do is basically be insulting him.
Yeah, I have to go to a break. But I mean, if I was a spin doctor in number 10, I'd be pulling my hair out right now. We'll continue with our Future Politics panel with Jonas and with Oliver after this break.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this Parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence, and she has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I've got some breaking news for you. Hamas has released the names of 3 women who it says it will release first. They are Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher and British-Israeli Emily Damari among the first hostages set to be released today. So the 3 names have now been released. Now that changes things significantly. So that ceasefire was due to come into effect at 6:30, so we're now 2.5 hours after that. Israel delayed it because they said they didn't have the names. They now have the names. Israel has continued to carry out strikes on Gaza. 10 people have been killed today since the truce was due to start. That's according to Hamas-run civil defense agency. And we're watching that closely. Doron Steinbrecher, 31, a veterinary nurse, she was in her apartment in Kibbutz Kfar Aza when the Hamas attacked. Emily Damari. Now, she holds dual British-Israeli nationality. She was taken hostage from Kibbutz Kfar Aza as well. Romy Gonen, 24, she was ambushed as she tried to escape from the Supernova Festival. That is the breaking news. As I say, 10 people have been killed since that ceasefire was due to come into effect at 6:30 this morning. We'll bring you the latest on all of that as and when we get it. Let me just ask you, gentlemen, very quickly about this, and it's just a story that caught my eye. The owner of Poundland, one of Britain's, I'm sure you don't go to Poundland, but I love a Poundland. One of Britain's biggest discount retailers has drafted in city advisors to explore radical options for arresting the growing crisis. They're part of Pepco Group. They've owned Poundland since 2016. They are looking at whether they should restructure. They're losing tons of money. Should they restructure, have a CVA, a company voluntary arrangement, restructuring? I just wonder, what does it say about the British economy when a pound shop can't survive?
Well, I think that's a question you should probably ask Rachel Reeves. And I think we've seen as well with, she's willing to increase borrowing. She said the other day to fund more public sector works. Look, the British economy is in a dire situation, and I think that is as a result of Rachel Reeves' policies. We saw her budget in October. Apparently this was supposed to be a Labour government that was going to be pro-business, going to be pro-economic growth, and yet we see through their policies it's the complete opposite of that, and they're throwing working people under the bus.
You're using that term, working people. I hate that term, working people.
No, but it is true. I mean, look, you take something like the employers' national insurance contributions rises. Labour are insistent that this is only going to affect employers. What I think Labour don't realise is that employers are only going to be faced with two choices. Either they're going to have to raise prices on their goods and services, in which case working people are going to be paying more, or they're going to have to cut costs internally, make redundancies, etc., which is also going to affect working people. So that's what I mean. I think it's completely fair to say that they are.
It's just such politicians speak, working people. And what do you think, Poundland? I mean, Poundland is where you go, but when you're saving your penny, I mean, actually, you have to be careful because not everything is a pound.
Exactly, and things add up. I love Poundland, and my favourite Poundland on Edgware High Street. But
why is that your favourite one?
It was I do tour them, and I'll be beginning again from. I wouldn't extrapolate this too much to national insurance or the budget, or I would look. It's not rare for an old high street company to restructure. The questions I have are what happened to the death of the high street. Everything's gone online, and the Poundland model doesn't work. Although interestingly,
we're starting to see high street recovering apparently, because the consumers actually have realised they quite like to touch clothes and feel them and look at them.
Yeah, and people have started to change their policies about buying and returning, and there's the environmental aspects. But nevertheless, I wouldn't extrapolate it to a Rachel Reeves budget. Because there are businesses that were once very like Woolworths and HMV that thrived on the high street.
I loved a Woolies.
That thrived on the high street,
But Simon Wolfson, and your point is really valid. Simon Wolfson, who's chief executive of Next, just said the employer's national insurance ill thought through. Even if you believe in the concept of it, you phase it in. You can't lumber business straight away.
I mean, I was going to say as well, 2/3 of firms and companies are saying that they're now losing confidence in the government to push for a pro-business economy. I think upwards of 70% of businesses are now concerned about the national insurance tax rises. I mean, I think it is fair to extrapolate that the two are linked. Businesses are going to be suffering as a result of this, and consumers are going to be on the worst end of that.
I'm a passionate believer in not giving statistics to say that things are getting better, but only things get better when people feel they're getting better.
Yeah, and that was the government's fault though, because they talked it down, so there is no confidence.
But the confidence seems to be re-emerging, which is, and I'm happy to have the opportunities brought up, which is.
Can I have some of your glasses, your rose-coloured glasses?
Which is we're now starting to see projections of growth. We're now starting to see inflation come towards
1%. It was due to be.
It wasn't. It was the IMF upgraded it to 1.6%. It's not to say that everything's great. Things are only great when people feel they're great. But they're 6 months into office.
And look how badly they've performed already.
But what's the metric, which is inflation is coming down, 1.6% growth is projected. But they are 6 months into office and trying to revitalise
I tell you what, why don't you both come back in another 6 months or before that, and let's see how they're getting on. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Really good to see you. That's Jonas Dean, their political commentator, Oliver Dean, who is political commentator with Young Voices UK.